Okay, this says pyrography, chip carving, and color. Pyrography is a fancy word that was invented in Victorian times to mean wood burning, because up to then it was called poker work. You would take a hot poker and whatever you were going to decorate and keep a bunch of them in the fire, a lot of irons in the fire, right? And then you take them out and draw designs and carve designs on something, a trunk or whatever, a milk bucket, whatever. At any rate, chip carving is obvious. You just dig little chips out of wood. And I had done carbon, I'm also nervous, a pencil, colored pencil, black and white, charcoal, pastel, and watercolor, all of which are layered color when you're building a painting. And I brought all of that to the work I do here. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay. I woke up this morning with this slide in my mind. Suddenly I realized, first of all, my work is not about a product, it's about images. People buy an iris for grandma. And I discovered that, keeping a huge range of images is very important in it. Second of all, a lot of pyrographers now try for a very smooth surface, a very light hand, and a lot of very subtle shading. And I like to dig in. I like to carve and engrave and leave the surface tactily and visually interesting and going up and down. If any of you get to come up and see some of these, you can feel the feathers, the outlines of the feathers on this owl whenever you touch it. Okay. I use original designs, obviously, but that's an awful lot of drawings. I work a lot with tagu and nut pendants, and I'm going to show you a slide on that right away so you know what we're talking about. And they have been a wonderful discovery. Zoo people love them because every zoo docent is given a tagu and nut pendant to show people that you don't have to have ivory to have pretty things that are on something looking like ivory. Every one of my necklaces has something on the back. That's because I used to look down and see a blank necklace. And I said, if I don't like that, my customers won't like it either. When I got better cords and wanted to stop doing that, my customers said, oh, no, no, no. So they still all have two sides. And the last thing is I do a lot of wraparound designs, which you'll see as we go through this. Okay, let's go on to. These are just a few samples. As I said, my husband makes turned wooden lidded boxes, which I can decorate. And down at the bottom there's a funny looking owl. That's a magnet. I've got a couple up here. He makes me magnet blanks that I can play with. And I did plaques. I've done plaques over the years. Those are pre-purchased boxes with the giraffe on it, but you can see the wrapping around from the top of the box to the front of the box. And down at the right, the little golden retriever is on a slice of tagua palm nut. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, these are called vegetable ivory. They come from Central America. By the way, raise your hand if you can't hear me, please. It sounds loud here. They come from Central America. On the left, I put a picture of the tree. These huge heads of nuts, these like soccer ball things, hang very low. You can reach up and pick them, and they actually fall to the ground when they're ripe. So people have harvested them for centuries. If you look on the right, there's a picture of someone eating one. They've cut open the whole bowl, and they're eating the insides with a spoon. When they get older, however, the oils in them cause them to harden a great deal, and people have carved them for centuries. And nowadays, they slice them and ship them around the world as jewelry parts and that sort of thing. I have a sample up here of one of the nuts. We cannot slice these. By the time they get here, they smash. So we buy a slice, and Bill drills a hole in it for me, and I decorate it, and I carve on it. Okay, good. These are my chip carving tools, or a sample of them. Chip carving is supposed to be geometric. You're supposed to do, and mostly traditionally, it has been extremely formal with beautiful mandalas. I made 3 things, and the third one had so many mistakes in it, I almost brought it tonight, that I said, I'm going to draw pictures. So all my chip carving since then has been drawing pictures. This dragon is here tonight. You can see everything except the black background is carved. The black background is done with a pyrography pen. Hours of sitting there making little figure eights and laying it a bit at a time to make an interesting texture. Well, you know, it's a labor of love, obviously. Okay. Very quickly, these are my wood burning tools. There are all kinds of brands on the market. The important thing is the good ones have variable heat and interchangeable tips. And I put up a little bit of an old catalog just to show how many tips there are. Most pyrographers end up using 3 to 5 tips for almost all their work. One is let's go on. Yep. One is a shading tool of some sort. It lays like this across the work. And you can get beautiful smoothed out blacks, like the blacks in that butterfly on the left, and you can get all kinds of textures. I've done it where I carved a swan and then put the ripples in, 3-dimensionally around the box with a shading tool. Okay. The second one that almost everyone uses is some sort of knife or skew. I have these custom made so that I can get the fine detail that I want. They're very long and sharp. If you look at the fur, the texturing of the fur on that wolf's neck, it is up here. You all can look at it if anyone wants to and see that, in fact, the thing is very furry looking on the tagua nut. The other wolf is carved into the box so that it had eye sockets and rounded eyes, and under each of those ruffs, I carved in so deeply and so dark and hot with the tool, which I was using a skew knife, but a thicker one, that each ruff is higher than the area right under it. And I had a wonderful time with that piece. I just want to say that was so much fun. Okay. This is to give you an idea of how fine you can get. That butterfly was under 3 inches tall. And not only the skew knives, but the brushes that I use are very, very fine. My son said to me, we had a book, and the woman said she'd written it with brushes of 1 hair, and my son said, Mom, you need that. So I went out and got some liners, which are not 1 hair, but they're very fine. Okay. This is just a view of a bunch of tagua nut slices, which I've burned. On the left, it's burned, and I've left it with, there's a tar that makes it brown. And sometimes I just varnish them and sell them that way. But if I'm going to paint them, the next step is that, the next step is that I wash them off. I wash all that tar off. And then I start putting layers of color, usually starting with whites if there's going to be blues in it, or green, or yellow if there's going to be greens in it. And the thing is, when you're putting a lot of layers of color and then putting lacquer on top of it, light comes through and it's not hitting the same combination at every level, at every part of the thing. And they glow. They really do. They have a wonderful shimmer, even when I'm not using shimmery colors. Okay. Just a sample of subjects and of the detail that can go into just the burning of a tagua. Okay. And then I started trying to talk about the paint, and here are some samples. Now, the longest of those brushes is a 1/2 inch long, from the ferrule to the tip of the brush. And they're wonderful. You see the outline around the wolf? That was done by placing a fairly dry brush in the groove I had carved and painting inside that groove. And all of the white on the wolf's chest has been done over and over again in the grooves, because fur is not cold white. It's got all kinds of shadows and nuances and textures. Okay. This is, again, a sandpiper, where you can see the first step I took was to do this thing of painting in the grooves that were left from the pyrography. By the way, the reason I do this is that pyrography itself can fade, but the acrylic paint will not fade. So I found that my work lasts much better since I added the acrylic paint. Okay. These are a few painted tagua pendants. This particular one I'm wearing tonight. And I see I left off something. It's supposed to say stippling, which is where you decorate something by making little dots in it. And I can take the pyrography pens and carve textures. The trees in the front, the dark trees, all you can see is the glint of the light on it. It's very hard to photograph. But they're stippled. They're dug into to make a texture. And then my son again was sitting there saying, "Mom, you need more detail on the far mountains." So I'm sitting there putting more stippling and more layers of paint until he thought it looked like mountains, which is why this one took me 10 hours. Okay, thank you. Now recently I've been absolutely in love with metallic paint and iridescent paint. The hummingbird, which is here. I'll see if I can show you. Only the hummingbird is iridescent here. And the challenge was to make it look like a hummingbird looks when it's flying and not look like a tin ornament on a Christmas tree. And it was a lot of fun. I was falling asleep one night and I had a picture in my mind of a peacock's chest or a pheasant's chest with all the feathers spilling down. And about a week later, come here you. About a week later, I tried putting it on a tagua. And I have enjoyed these very much, and I'm making a series of them now. And on the right, the top butterfly, you can see that there are three-dimensional puff paint effects with the gold paint. These paints can be used really thinly and spread out and used for very subtle glow and bouncing off of each other. Or you can put it on very thickly and wet and let it make a visible, tangible lump on the piece. And it's just great, actually. Okay, enough of that. And this is going to not be long enough here. These are a couple of my wraparound designs for fun. I was hoping to show a flamingo I have that it's the gawkiest looking flamingo in the world, and I just love it. But I ran out of patience and time. And I think there's one more slide. This is a pattern. I almost never use a pattern. This was a woman named Cheryl Dell who wrote in Wood Carving Magazine who designed this, and I was in her class. I want to tell you, the International Association of Pyrographic Artists was the first online pyrography group, and it was founded by a woman in Falls Church, Virginia. She was a member of the Northern Virginia Carvers, and her name was Kathleen Menendez. For health reasons, she's moved home to Guatemala now. But she organized a class for us with this magnificent teacher, and then she said, "Oh, we have really skilled pyrographers. Don't start them on baby stuff. Start them on the hardest thing you've got." We were the only group that was ever allowed to do that. I want to add one more thing. I didn't like the trilliums in the pattern. She'd never seen them, obviously. So I fixed them. And I didn't like the head of the deer. And Jerry Gant from this guild kindly sold me an unmatted picture of a deer to use in this. So Jerry had a piece in making this one happen. And that is the presentation I have. I was terrified of talking too long. And we'll take questions. And there are samples up here if we have a few minutes. That's a thought. We can turn the lights on and people can look at what it looks like, feel what it feels like, and get an idea for what I've really been talking about. Thank you very much. I want I sort of promised Marianne I would tell people that this presentation, intimidating as it can be, was also more fun than I ever dreamed it would be, from start to finish. I had never, ever opened my PowerPoint software until I started doing this. And doing the interviews, talking to Maria, and her questions were wonderful. And working out what do I really like about my work, and putting together kind of a retrospective of some of the kinds of things I've done was great fun, and I urge you to think about doing it for yourself. Thank you very much.